Hey, 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 welcome to the Beyond the Prophy Podcast. I'm your host, Jasmin Haley, and today's guest is Dr. Tonia Socha-Mower. And listen, y'all, I know that you're going to gather so much jewels and gems. If you happen to be seated down, grab your pen and paper. If not, you know that you can listen to this episode as many times as you want. Tonia opened the first dental clinic in the nation that was embedded in a medical clinic and counseling center of a student health center. She was appointed by Governor Steve Beshear to serve the Commonwealth of Kentucky as a voting member of the Kentucky Board of Dentistry. She's a former executive director, CEO of the American Association of Dental Boards, and now is the senior director of development for Jefferson City Center, a larger nonprofit. Welcome to the show, Dr. Tonia.
Well, thank you. Please call me Tonya.
Okay. We
We've been
want to
friends too
acknowledge the
long.
hard work that you've put into your education, okay?
Yes, this is true. This is true.
You know,
I'm
it's
almost 50 years old and I just finished about a year ago. So,
that's incredible. That is
yeah.
incredible. What was that like for you? What was it like getting your doctorate?
So, I have a very unique path to get me here. I don't want to bore you with too many details, but if you indulge me here for a second, when I was 18, I went to a small liberal arts college in Roanoke, and I loved it because I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And so gravitated to business school just because the numbers came easy to me. Always was very interested in the science, but to me, if I didn't have a goal, it was a lot of work and a lot of time when I was really enjoying a balanced college life. Let's put it that way.
Ooh, that's
So,
smart. I love it.
so a lot of my friends that were taking the hard sciences, they were spending a lot of times in labs, and I wanted to be able to goof off and develop myself personally. So I say all this to say, I graduated and worked for a place called Ferguson Enterprises. So when people were building their homes, they would come and see me, and I would help them design their lighting and plumbing. And it was a cool job, especially out of school. But I felt like I wanted to do something that helped people more. And I randomly went to an orthodontist appointment, and he says to me, I always thought you'd make a good dentist. So the light bulb went off, and I marched over to the nearest dental school, which was Virginia Commonwealth University at the time in Richmond, Virginia, and said, I want to go to dental school. And they said, well, it's great that, you have managerial economics and study marketing, but we need you to take organic chemistry and some of the biology and biochem. So I
Mhm.
said, well, if I'm going to go back to school, I'm going to get a master's. So I went back to Roanoke, Virginia, where I went to undergrad, and then got into grad school and got my master's in biology and took all the hard sciences, and then went to dental school.
Mm.
And in my third year of dental school, I started to develop problems with tremors. So I did all of the hard
Mm.
stuff. I did the gross anatomy where you dissect the human body. Um, but I was at the point where I was starting to, inject patients, but I couldn't keep my hands still. And so
Mm.
I was doing really well. So the dean of students suggested to me, she said, why don't you take some time off, or let's transfer you into hygiene school so that if you can't get these tremors under control, you don't graduate with all this dental school debt, but you can still be involved in research. And so I ended up transferring to the hygiene program and finished. And then I told my husband I wanted to go someplace that had lots of dental need. So that took me to Kentucky. And when I got to Kentucky, um, worked at a DSO for a year while I studied. I wanted to get my residency, thinking that if I went to dental school, I wanted to get in-state tuition, and looked at both U of L and the University of Kentucky there, and they both told me, well, it's great that you have that these years invested in dental school, but you'd have to start all over. And at that point, I don't know how much you know about the scope of practice in Kentucky, but it's pretty wide compared to other states, which is one of the reasons why I went out there. Um, and so I was able to give local anesthesia. We could use lasers, and so I didn't feel like pouring another $100,000 into school was really gonna add a lot to what I could do. Yes, I could diagnose, and yes, I could use the drill, but as a hygienist that had all the certifications, like I said, I had a pretty wide scope of practice, so I could help patients in a lot of ways without all of that extra debt.
Mm,
But it always bothered me. I never had a terminal degree.
mm.
So,
I
so
never knew this about you. This is
you
why
did?
I'm trying to maintain my composure and not be like, "What, girl? What?" Keep going.
So, fast forward to Morehead State University, which is what you were alluding to, the university where I started the first dental clinic that was embedded in a medical clinic with a counseling center on a student health campus. Being a university employee, you've got free tuition. And so I always
Right.
felt like it was part of my compensation. So while I was there, I got my master's in education there. So I got two master's degrees at that point. And then the governor had decided that he felt, the governor at the time, it's a different governor now, the governor at the time felt like dental care was a luxury and they needed to cut costs. So we also, incidentally, got a new university president who felt the same. Felt like they wanted to invest the money into the mental health side of student health and
Interesting.
felt like they could refer any dental problems to at the local hospital. So they said, Tonia, if uh, you resign your position, what we'll do is we'll give you 3 extra years of free tuition. And at that time, the American Association of Dental Boards was looking for someone to step in. They had lost their executive director a couple months back and they were feeling the repercussions. And I was a member because at that time I was a part of the Kentucky Board of Dentistry. And so the president of the AADB was from Kentucky, and we had worked on a couple projects together. Um, so he appointed me as interim executive director, and we worked really well together. So after that contract ended, they ended up promoting me to the permanent position. Meanwhile, I'm in Chicago, and that's actually when our path started to cross, Jasmine.
Yeah.
And and I was taking my EDD classes, and I finished pretty much everything in that period where I had free tuition. But COVID messed me up because well, it messed a lot of things up. Unfortunately, one of our faculty members passed away from COVID, and so that messed up the timing. So I did end up having to pay for 1 or 2 classes out of pocket, but I've been very blessed that most of my schooling has been at no charge to me. So
Listen, if I don't know, listen, y'all need to be hearing this hack, okay? Who wants as little student loans as possible? Raise your hand. Raise your hand, y'all. So I really love how you kind of leverage your places of employment and getting to a place of like you're like the true definition of a lifelong learner. Like if I personally could be a professional student, I would select that career. I
yeah.
literally would. Like I'm totally okay with that. I love learning. I love finishing off with the degrees. And so I really love the fact that you were very strategic and intentional with making sure that you also served with excellence in your roles, but you also took advantage of the benefits that were there. I'm
Mhm.
curious to know, because you stated a couple of things and the listeners kind of heard on the outset too that you're the executive director, CEO of the American Association of Dental Boards, that you were senior director of development for right now for Jefferson Center. You also have had a part in opening the first clinic in the nation that was embedded in a medical clinic. These are really impactful projects
Mhm.
and companies and organizations to be a part of. And I would love for you to kind of share what were some of the skills that you needed to develop within yourself to leverage that? Because what I find is for most of us, whether we are serving in a dental work role, dental hygiene role, dental assistant role, we often can't see the bigger picture of how we can leverage our own brilliance, our own experiences. So, what were some of the skills that you felt made an impact in being able to navigate and pivot into these different roles?
You know, there's a lot of things that we could talk about, but if I had to boil it down into one or two things, I would really say it's my opinion that what I've been given the opportunities because of my attitude.
Mm,
I'm a glass half full type of gal,
mm,
and um, I just tend to focus on the positive. And I'll give you an example. So, at a recent employer, there was a culture where people were very nice, very healthy environment, but it was very much, this is my work. You're my work friend. We're not going to text out of work. After work, it is my time. And I can respect that, but I choose projects that I really like and I'm very passionate about. So I am happy if there's a meeting or an event that's after hours, that I'm happy to stay late or work weekends, especially if I'm working for an employer that's pretty flexible, meaning if you work late one night, then they let you come in a little later the next day, so you can, still get your doctor's appointments in and all of those things.
yeah.
Um, but a lot of my colleagues were pretty much, if it's after 5 or on the weekends, I'm unavailable.
Mhm.
And that's fine if you have an employer that works for. But because I didn't have that attitude, I think I stood out. And whenever there was any extra work that needed to be done, it would be funneled my way. And I never looked at it as extra work. I always looked at it, this is an opportunity for me to learn or for me to grow or for me to lead, and really focused on the positive. And because of that, I have a really diverse skill set, probably too diverse. You know, a little side note, I really struggle with LinkedIn.
Mm,
I was one of the early adopters to LinkedIn before they worked out all the kinks. And so, I had a profile, but I haven't been on it in probably 25 years. But every once in a while I think, oh, I should go on there and update my information. But I
yeah.
struggle with, I have a dental resume, I have an educator's resume, I have a fundraiser's resume, I have an ED CEO resume. And so, how do
Okay.
you put such a wide, diverse skill set on into one document or one profile without it being confusing to folks?
I
Because
see.
I
I've got some
find if
ideas for you. I got some ideas with you. Okay, keep
yeah,
going. Keep going. Yeah.
okay. So, because I find that whenever I submit like a chronological CV or resume,
Yeah.
it confuses folks. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
little
Mhm.
side note. so,
Yeah.
um, so my point is, I really think that the way that I have looked at quote unquote extra work has served me well.
Mhm. Mhm. We've actually had someone share that before on our podcast, that when they were opportunities, sometimes they weren't paid, right? Sometimes they were volunteer, and they would just simply raise their hand. And just by simply raising their hand, the leaders and decision makers of the company were able to see them and were able
Hmm.
to recognize and get the opportunity to work with and for them, right? So I appreciate you sharing that point because it is true. sometimes these opportunities and the skills that you need for the opportunities aren't going to show up unless you show up.
Mm-hmm.
And that is still possible. And I want to speak specifically to those who are raising children, because I did it raising children. Okay. I was able to volunteer with a nonprofit association. I have been able to gather skills along the way, but still be able to maintain the work life harmony that I desire for me. And so everybody's looks different. But at the end of the day, regardless of what opportunities you hear, I'm hearing it from Dr. Tonya, I'm hearing it from other people who come on to this podcast, that we've got to show up. We have to show up. We can't continue to sit and on the sidelines waiting for opportunities to 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 happen. And I also love the point that you shared, that one of your specific roles that you obtained was because you were involved with another organization. Someone happened to move on to another organization and thought of you for an opportunity. So here's a great example of why we should not burn bridges. Bridges can show up at any point in time in our career. How has that helped you along your way?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. One of the reasons why I've been successful at climbing the corporate ladder, if you will,
Mhm,
is um, because I have been known as a successful networker. Um, I'm pretty old school, and most of the jobs that I've landed haven't been through social media or posting. It's been because
mm,
somebody knows somebody and this opening is happening, is about to happen, or they're looking for this specific skill set and they said, "Oh, I know somebody you should talk to."
mhm.
This person being me, and so that has worked in my favor as well. Um, my mind's racing with with different examples of things that we could talk about, but um, I'm sorry, Jasmine,
It's
my mind
okay.
just went blank.
So what would you say would be your key to success? What's the key for you?
I think choosing projects that you really truly enjoy and following your passion. Um, I am very passionate about oral health, but I realized that I had other things that I enjoyed too. So I didn't limit myself to just dentistry or just dental hygienist roles. Or, I had actually worked my way up. I was a dental assistant. I was a lab tech. And so I think constantly growing and learning and really looking inward as far as what you're passionate about is really important.
Yeah, and I think that passion, sometimes if you find that you are lacking it, like it's not flowing, the creative juices have stopped. It's amazing when you get into a space with other people who may be passionate, people who are excited about the work that they do. You can feel invigorated. So I feel like there's two ways. You can rest. Some of us need to just rest, turn everything off, turn the noise off, go to sleep.
Yeah.
Or just have some fun and don't think about work. And then the second leg of it is, if you've rested and you still don't feel passionate about the work that you're doing, then maybe you need to get yourself outside of the operatory, the four walls in your operatory, outside of what you're familiar with, and go out and network, meet individuals, get in spaces
Mhm,
with them, hear their stories, listen to this
mhm,
podcast, right? Like, there's so many ways. If you can't leave home, listen to this podcast, and it'll allow you to just start exploring and connecting more to what's important to you. And what I'm hearing from you is that you took the time to realize that, so that you can continue to feel fulfilled in your own career.
absolutely, absolutely.
What advice would you give to others who are thinking about moving beyond clinical dentistry?
Mm. I'm in a lot of the same social media groups that many of your listeners are. Um, and we've all seen those posts about, I've outgrown my current position and I'm interested in leaving clinical dentistry, but I don't want to go back to school, don't have the opportunity to go back to school for whatever reason. There's some educational barriers, and I really think it can be done. Um, Even though I chose to go back to school because I had some great opportunities land in my lap, I think if you have the right attitude and you seek out those opportunities, and to your point earlier, Jasmin, it may be volunteer opportunities in the beginning, but if you get your name out there and show your work ethic and show that you're competent and show that you're a hard worker, those what you put out in the universe is just going to come back. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And there is hope, right? There's also clinical opportunities as well. I want to make sure that we emphasize that you can choose whatever route floats your boat.
I actually, I'm
You
glad that you
know?
said that because I actually miss my patients and I'm looking to go back to clinical care on a part-time basis because I really miss the clinic.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
listen, nothing else replaces that. Nothing
yeah.
else replaces the clinical aspect. You can't, it's just something really beautiful when you are working with your patients, and then you see them progress in their health. You meet them for the first time, you laugh, you get to know them. Like, as much as I love the work that I do in my own business, nothing has replaced patient care. And in
Mhm.
fact, I get excited about spending the time with the patient and sharing with them things that they didn't realize about their oral health, and getting them to a place of understanding, hey, there's nothing to fear here. We're a co-collaborative team here. You do your work, I do my work, and then let's see how we can get back and restore your health. So I agree with you. I agree
I
with
actually
you.
have an interesting story that your listeners may find interesting. So I'm currently in Virginia, and there is an FQHC down the street, and I worked
Mm,
for an FQHC in Kentucky. Now I'm currently licensed in Kentucky and Missouri, but I let my license lapse in Virginia because I was like, why pay for three licenses? And I regret it. So all listeners, don't let a license lapse. But anyway,
I agree.
um,
Keep going.
so COVID hit and I came back to Virginia and talked to the dental director at this FQHC, and he wanted a clinical hygienist. And at that point, I did not realize that getting relicensed or reactivating my license in Virginia was going to be as big of a deal as it is because I have an active license in two other states. Um, and so went on the interview and ultimately got the job offer. When I started looking into what Virginia was going to want me to do, they wanted me to take a refresher course because even though I'm traveling back and forth on a regular basis, seeing patients at a free clinic,
Mhm.
I don't have a dentist to sign off that says that I've been actively employed clinically for a number of years. So they want me to take a refresher course. So meanwhile, everyone probably knows about the dental compact. And so Virginia has signed on for the Virginia compact. So I'm trying to wait it out. So I'm sharing all this to say months go by. And so I reached out to the dental director and said, hey, just so you know, wanted to give you an update. Still very interested in seeing patients for you one of these days. However, I'm trying to wait for some of the states to get their ducks in a row. Otherwise, they're going to want me to go out of state to take this refresher course. It's expensive. Um, and
Mhm.
so I'm just going to wait it out, but still very interested. And like 2 months later, he emails me again with a job offer, which is very nice, but I still don't have a license. But my point is, I'm turning down a job offer and I was able to do it in a way that didn't offend him. And let him know that I'm still very interested in seeing patients. I want to return to the clinic as soon as I can. So that door is going to be open. And he actually had shared with me his vision, which is to grow grow the dental department. And so he's going to need somebody to run the education aspect of it because they're going to be bringing in dental students and hygiene students. And so they're going to need someone to help manage all of the education side. And of course, my doctorate's in education. So it may even lead to another interesting opportunity, clinical and or non-clinical or a hybrid, right?
Yeah, that is so awesome. And I don't know if you are aware, but it took me about 2 months or so to get my license in North Carolina, and they did not care how long I was licensed in the state of Maryland at all. In fact, because I was an educator and because of COVID, I we had moved here almost 5 years ago. I wasn't seeing clinical patients once I left the state of Maryland. So they would not renew or give me a license in the state that I'm in unless I took the boards again, the clinical boards. So
That makes sense.
I had to reinvest in taking the clinical boards. I had to
Wow.
take uh the exam on the typodont, and then I had to take the written one. And I'm going to have to retake the same course for anesthesia, even though I've been local anesthesia certified for over 10 years and I've actually taught the course. So, for anyone that's listening, oh, this is just like if you move to a new state, immediately get your license, even if you feel like you're not going to work, get your license because they have these parameters and requirements where you have to have a certain number of hours of working clinically if they're going to give you your license. They don't care if you've been in education, they don't care what's been happening in your life. They want you to have these certain uh, boxes checked off. And so it's frustrating. It is frustrating to be in that place, and hopefully there'll be some change. We actually had Andrew Johnston on our podcast kind of talking about this, and I came up with my solution and he came up with his, and we talked about the hybrid solution that we both discussed prior to having this conversation. But it's necessary. It's necessary. It's frustrating. So for anyone that is listening, if you have any inkling that you may move, go ahead and do it. So after I've gotten North Carolina, I plan on getting 3 other states licenses while my recent board CDCA examination is still fresh,
Hmm.
and just apply. That's all I'm gonna do. I'm gonna get all those states just in case we happen to move.
Now, since I left the AADB, I'm out of touch, but North Carolina was one of the states that was really excited about the compact, last
That's
I heard.
interesting. I don't think they're in I don't think they're part of the compact. But don't
I,
quote me on that.
I'd be surprised if they're not coming. I mean, it's a
Okay.
slow process, but I'd be really surprised. And of course, that's going to open up some opportunities for you. But if you're trying to move to a state that's not in the compact, it's not going to help you. Going back to your point, right? So,
Yeah. Oh.
mhm.
Oh, if I could just roll around on the floor right now, I would. Okay.
But, I was talking to my friend, who is executive director of Missouri yesterday, and one of the reasons why I called him for a bunch of different reasons, but while I had his ear, I said, "What do you know that's going on in Florida?" Because I read online, and I don't know how accurate this is, I haven't researched it, but according to this article, Florida was the 21st state that has signed on for universal licensure.
Wow.
So meaning, and every state has different verbiage, but basically, if you have a license in another state, um, then it's going to be easier to get licensed there. So, Arizona was
Yeah.
the very first one to do it a couple years ago, and according to this
Mhm,
article, Florida
mhm.
is just signed on to um, signed it into law in July. So
Yeah.
I looked at the
I
website, but they haven't updated it yet because it's going to take time to
yeah.
update all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I feel like every hygienist we know basic hygiene skills. I may not be a restorative dental hygienist. I should never be paid like a restorative dental hygienist. That is not my area of expertise. I need to go ahead and take the additional schooling for that. However, we all know how to scale. We know how to coronal polish, right? There's basic skills, apply fluoride varnish. There's basic skills that we do, and it would be awesome if I can just do the basic stuff
Mhm.
in all 50 states.
Right.
But I don't want to digress and take away from your your story and highlighting your amazing career, but it's just interesting that you share that. And like, yeah, it's like there's so many people eager to work, but the barriers are just crazy. And there's a
Mhm.
shortage, and the shortage is real. The
Mhm.
office that I have been working in, they let me see. Um, what did they say? I think it was like 7 or 8 months before they found
Right.
a hygienist.
Wow. Yeah.
That's a long time to wait for a revenue producing clinician.
Sure.
That's
Sure.
a long time.
Sure. Now,
So
on the
it's something
flip
serious.
side, to apply this to what we were talking about earlier, though, when I was thinking about going back to work and I was trying to figure out, do I want to reapply for my license or am I going to wait for the compact to take effect? Um, and I decided, well, this is an opportunity for me to strengthen some of my administrative and leadership skills. And so, again, I think there's always a silver lining. You just may have to dig for it.
Yeah, this is true. This is true. I'm looking for it. What is it? I don't know, God. I'm just going to be grateful, just grateful that I got my license and that's it. I'm not going to complain. I got it
And I'm
and
not,
that's it.
and Jasmine, I'm not trying to minimize your struggle because I know that it's frustrating because, like I said, I am really missing patient care and it's driving me crazy that, you know, I can go to Kentucky and treat patients, and there's a patient in pain right down the street, and I can't help them. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, everyone say your prayers. We need everybody to pray. We'll see. I'm hoping it happens in my lifetime. But yeah, that's so true. All right, so going back to just the outset of our conversation here, and thinking about you being a healthcare executive, because that's how I'm going to
mhm,
label you, a healthcare executive. I love what you shared. So if we were to kind of go back into time and think about like where you've been, um, and where you're headed, because I'm sure
mhm.
if you're like me, we always have a 5-year plan, a 3-year plan, a 10-year plan, forever. We're always going to do that. I would be curious to know, like, what kind of advice would you give yourself, especially the Tanya that's in dental school?
So I think that um, one of my keys to success has been being flexible. So
Hmm.
even though you mentioned your 3-year plan, your 5-year plan, we may see ourselves going in one direction, but there might be opportunities um, that are placed at our feet that we might want to take. You know, as much as I like to think about the future and I like to plan, I don't like to handcuff myself too
Mm,
much. Um,
that's good.
and so I try to take on a lot of opportunities that um, are, I don't want to say vague or general, but can be molded in different ways. So, for example, I was talking to a hygienist friend who runs a hygiene school out in Lexington, Kentucky, and she's doing the same EDD program that I did at Moorhead. And so she was asking what I did for my big, capstone dissertation project. And so she was saying, I think there's lots of opportunities for me to make a big impact in oral health. And I said, oh, absolutely, especially where you're the director of a hygiene program. I would think that that would be amazing. I said, I actually took the opposite approach though. I said, because I was at Moorhead and I was at that time director of the the dental program the medical program and the counseling center, I felt like it was really easy for me to get research opportunities in oral health. So I wanted to focus on the medical and the counseling and the exercise science and opportunities that I don't have as much access to. And so really spent time. I mean, ultimately, I wrote a curriculum that was talking about the silos and how in healthcare we would all work in our own silos. And the basis of it was we need to collaborate more. But um, going back to your question, I try to really open up opportunities so that I have a diverse skill set and it doesn't limit me. I love oral health and I'm very dedicated to oral health, and oral health has been very good to me. But there are opportunities outside of oral health for me to apply and be fulfilled with as a hygienist.
I love that. And I love the fact that you also shared, just being open. I want to just point out too that there's been times that I've applied for opportunities that had nothing to do with dentistry and I didn't check all the boxes.
Mhm.
And I think sometimes we count ourselves out. We're like, oh, well, I haven't had this and I haven't had that. I guarantee you, most men that you know will apply for positions and not worry about checking all the boxes.
Mhm.
And my husband is like that. And so many other male friends that I have are like that. So if you are interested, I love that you shared be flexible, but I think that's also a really good point for the listeners. Like apply for the job. What else
Mhm.
can happen other than saying no, sorry, we're not ready for an interview, you know?
And I went to undergrad at an all women's institution. And so one of the benefits to that was I became very familiar in research about things like that.
Mhm.
Jasmine, and they really instilled in us the fact that that women do discount themselves. So there's a lot of research to back up what you just said.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yeah. I
yeah,
live
yeah.
and breathe it.
Yeah,
I have
I know
lived
you
and
do.
breathed it. Okay. Most of us have. I'm sure most listeners can also agree. So I love the fact that you share that. It is backed by research. And I would not have gotten, think about my first education role, first full time education role. I applied 3 times, 3 or 4 times. And the last time I applied, I took the initiative to email the director of the program and let them know I'm interested. I'm applying for this position. I don't know if I qualify, but even if I don't, if they ever need someone part time, I would be interested. Do y'all know that my name went through for the interview and I got the job? So it's things like that. Just taking initiative, not giving up. Sometimes we quit after the first no. It's like, no, you have to be relentless. You have to be hungry and you have to really get to the nitty-gritty of understanding that you're worthy of the success that you desire. But you got to put in the work and don't be afraid of the no's or, maybe someone doesn't respond to an email. Follow back up. We all know how busy we get. We all know that sometimes we miss things, and that's
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely.
All right, Dr. Tanya. I'm going to call you Dr. Tanya because I appreciate that terminal degree, okay? Let the listeners know where they can contact you. How can they find you if they want to find out more information? And I'm going to tell them this to give a little bit of push to Dr. Tanya. She will be on LinkedIn again. And you'll be able to find her on LinkedIn. I pulled up her page, by the way. And it will be in the show notes. But go ahead and let them know where they can find you.
Well, they can email me personally at my first name, Tonia, dot my last name without the hyphen, Sochamower at gmail.com. And of course, you can drop me a text at 804 274 8984.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been lovely learning more about you. I've known you for years, but this is just wonderful to kind of get hear some of the back story to where you are now. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
Absolutely.